Ready to get small, like really small.
I think I can handle that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Because today we're going on a deep dive into the world of ants. Using excerpts from a scientific text, no less, you might think you know ants.
Most people have seen an ant or two, I'd say.
But I think you'll be surprised by some of the fascinating things we uncover.
I'm excited to see what we learn.
And to guide us through the ant world, we have our expert, who not only can explain the science, but can also connect the dots and reveal the why behind the what.
I do like to make those connections.
So let's shrink ourselves down to ant size and see what we can find. Let's start with the basics. Our text tells us that ants belong to the order Hymenoptera.
Which means...
It means they're actually related to bees and wasps.
Oh, yeah. I can kind of see that.
I know, right? And they all share this distinct body feature, a pinched waist called a petiole.
So like an hourglass figure.
Exactly. Now, how about their life cycle?
Well, they go through a complete metamorphosis.
Like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Exactly. From egg to larva to pupa to adult. And that pupal stage is particularly fascinating. It's like this tiny transformation factory where they develop into their specialized roles.
Ah, yes. Speaking of specialized roles, we can't forget the cast of characters in an ant colony.
I do love a good cast of characters.
The text highlights three main casts. The workers,
Of course, the workers.
the males called drones,
All right.
and then the queens. And can we just take a moment to appreciate the worker ants?
Absolutely, those tireless females are the backbone of the colony. Foraging for food, tending to the young, defending the colony. It's really remarkable.
Talk about multitasking. Now, the drones, on the other hand, they have just one job.
And what's that?
Mating. They're the only males in the colony, and once they've done their duty, well.
Their job is done. Nature can be harsh, but efficient that way.
And then there's the queen, the matriarch of the colony, laying all the eggs and keeping everything running smoothly.
She's the heart of it all. And you know what's interesting about her? She actually loses her wings after mating.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Once she's found a suitable spot to establish her nest, those wings become unnecessary. Her focus shifts to laying eggs and ensuring the growth of the colony.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've got our workers, our drones, and our queen. But all this activity requires fuel.
Food.
Right. Now, I think a lot of people assume that all ants eat wood like termites.
It's a common misconception.
Our text sets the record straight, though.
Yes, while carpenter ants might nest in wood, they don't actually eat it.
So no tiny lumberjacks.
Not quite. They're more like scavengers. They'll feast on dead insects, honeydew from aphids, things like that.
So they have a sweet tooth.
Some do, but ant diets are incredibly diverse. You've got omnivores, herbivores, even carnivores. Thousands of species worldwide have adapted to exploit almost every imaginable food source.
And that's a big part of their evolutionary success, right?
Absolutely. Take the harvester ant, for example. It's herbivore,
Herbivore meaning
they eat plants. And these guys, they clear vegetation around their nests and actually help to distribute seeds.
like tiny gardeners.
Exactly. Shaping the landscape around them and playing a crucial role in maintaining plant diversity.
Wow. It really makes you think about the interconnectedness of it all, doesn't it?
It really does. Now, on the flip side, you've got your pavement ant.
Those little guys who always seem to find their way into my kitchen.
Exactly. Our source says they have a particular fondness for grease and oil. It's one of the reasons they can be a nuisance.
So it's not just sweets that attract them.
Not at all. And this is why understanding the dietary preferences of different ant species is so important, especially when you're trying to keep them out of your house.
Makes sense. So we've covered the basics of ant biology, their social structures, and their surprisingly diverse diets.
We've laid the groundwork.
But the real fun begins when we delve into some of the more intriguing ant species out there.
Oh yes, the ant world is full of surprises. We've got sneaky thieves, acrobatic performers, and even some ants that pack a serious punch.
I feel like we're about to enter a nature documentary, ant style.
Let's do it.
Back again, ready for more ant adventures.
I'm ready when you are.
Great! We've been exploring all these amazing things about ants, their social structures, their diets, even how they shape the landscape around them.
Like tiny gardeners spreading seeds.
It's amazing. But we can't forget, not all ants are quite so harmless.
Definitely not.
In fact, some species are downright notorious, the stuff of homeowner nightmare.
Oh yeah, those guys.
Let's start with the ones who give people the most trouble, pharaoh ants. Our text describes them as these tiny yellow ants that get into everything. Homes, hospitals, you name it.
And once they're in, they're really hard to get rid of.
Because they spread so fast, right?
Exactly. Their colonies can split so easily, you try to control them with traditional methods like spraying.
And it just backfires.
Exactly. You might even end up making the problem worse.
Oh no. The text even mentions that pharaoh ants are a serious issue in hospitals.
Why is that?
Because they can contaminate sterile areas,
Oh, that's bad.
potentially even spreading disease.
That brings up a good point.
What's that?
Most ants aren't really a direct threat to humans,
Right.
but some, like the pharaoh ant, can actually become vectors for pathogens.
Interesting. Okay, moving on to another infamous ant, the fire ant.
Oh yeah, everyone knows those guys.
Aggressive, painful stings. Not the kind of ant you want to meet on a picnic.
Now, our text makes a distinction here.
Between.
The native southern fire ant and the invasive red imported fire ant.
So not all fire ants are the same?
Not quite. Both have painful stings.
Yeah.
But the red imported fire ant, that one's a much bigger problem.
More aggressive.
Way more aggressive. And their stings can cause really serious allergic reactions. In fact, here in Nevada, it's a quarantined pest.
Meaning?
There are strict regulations in place to try and prevent it from spreading. It really can disrupt native ecosystems.
Our text even says they can prey on ground-dwelling birds.
Wow, so they're not just going after crumbs.
Not at all. These guys are a force to be reckoned with. It's a good reminder that invasive species can have a huge ecological impact. And not just on the environment. Think about the economic damage, too. All the costs associated with trying to control these infestations and treat stings.
It adds up.
It does, but I do have a question.
What's that?
We've talked about all these ants that cause problems,
Right.
but are there any ants that are actually beneficial?
Oh, absolutely. Plenty of ant species are considered beneficial. Remember the harvester ants we talked about?
Spreading seeds, acting like little gardeners.
Exactly. They help with seed dispersal, improve soil health. Other ants prey on insects that we consider pests. So they act as natural pest control.
So it's really about balance.
I think so.
Ants play a vital role in a healthy ecosystem, even if some species can be, well, a little less than desirable.
It's all about understanding the complexities of their interactions with the environment and with us.
Makes sense. Okay, now for the practical part. What can we do about those pesky ants that get into our homes?
You know, the ones that always seem to find the sugar.
Exactly. Our text gives some helpful tips on ant control. What's the first line of defense?
Sanitation. Without a doubt. Eliminating food sources is absolutely crucial. Crumbs, spills, open food containers. It's like sending out an open invitation for ants to come on in.
So no more leaving a trail of breadcrumbs leading straight to the pantry.
Pretty much. Keep things clean, keep things tidy. The text also suggests doing perimeter treatments around the foundation of your home to stop them from getting inside in the first place.
What about those bait traps? Do those actually work?
They can, but you have to choose the right kind of bait for the species you're dealing with. Some prefer sweet baits, others go for protein-based baits. It might take a little trial and error to find what works best.
So you're not just laying out a buffet for any ant that happens to wander by.
Right. And remember, with baiting, you're letting the ants carry the poison back to the colony.
So you have to be patient.
Exactly. It can take a few days, even weeks to see results.
But what if you have a really serious infestation?
Then it might be time to call on the professionals. Pest control professionals have the knowledge and the tools to deal with more challenging situations, especially if you're dealing with something like carpenter ants or fire ants.
Makes sense. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've explored all these different ant species, from the hardworking workers to the sneaky thieves to the ones you really don't want to mess with.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. What stands out to you as the most important takeaway so far?
For me, it's this. Even the smallest creatures can have a huge impact on the world around us. Ants show us the power of collective action, of adaptation, and the interconnectedness of all life. Really makes you think.
It does. Makes you want to go outside and take a closer look at the ground beneath your feet, doesn't it?
You never know what you might find.
Back again for more ant adventures. I feel like we've barely scratched the surface.
There's always more to discover, isn't there?
It's amazing. But as we wrap up our deep dive, I want to shift gears a little bit.
Where are we headed?
Well, we've talked a lot about how ants impact us, but what about the other way around?
How we impact them.
Exactly.
That's an important question to consider.
It is. All our actions, from building cities to using pesticides, it all has a ripple effect.
It does. Think about those red imported fire ants we discussed.
Right.
A prime example of how human activities can introduce invasive species. And those species can really disrupt the natural balance.
It's not just invasive species, though, right? Habitat loss, too.
Absolutely. Deforestation, urbanization, it all forces ants to adapt, to relocate. And sometimes that leads to conflict with humans.
So it really is a two-way street, isn't it? We have to be mindful of our impact on them, just like we try to manage their impact on us.
Finding that balance is key. And I think understanding plays a big role in that.
Understanding what?
Understand ant behavior, their ecological roles, all the factors that affect their populations. That's how we figure out how to coexist.
Makes sense. But what can we do as individuals to, actually make a difference?
I think knowledge is a good place to start.
Knowing more about ants.
Exactly. The more we learn about the different species in our area, what they need, the better equipped we are to make informed decisions.
So if you know a certain ant is actually good for your garden, you might think twice about using pesticides.
Precisely. And even for those ants that do make their way into our homes, there are eco-friendly ways to deter them. Some people use essential oils, like peppermint or citrus.
Really?
Yeah, ants tend to avoid those.
So instead of harsh chemicals, you're creating this, ant force field of pleasant scents.
Something like that. You can also use things like diatomaceous earth.
What's that?
It's a natural powder, dehydrates ants and other insects.
So there are options for people who want to take a less aggressive approach.
There are. It's about remembering that ants are part of the natural world. They play important roles in healthy ecosystems. And we need to figure out how to live alongside them, not just try to wipe them out.
This whole deep dive has been a real eye-opener for me.
I'm glad to hear it.
I mean, I always thought ants were cool. But now, it's like I see them in a whole new light.
It's amazing what you can learn when you take the time to look closer, isn't it?
It really is. Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for our ant adventure today.
Sad to see it end.
Me too. But, hey, maybe this will inspire our listeners to go out and do some exploring of their own.
I hope so. And next time you see an ant, don't just step on it. Take a moment to appreciate the incredible world it represents. There's a whole universe beneath our feet, just waiting to be discovered.
Great advice. And on that note, we'll see you next time for another deep dive.